I mean, thanks for coming on the Teacher's Point of View podcast. Super excited to have you. I mean, I absolutely love you because I've been following you on social media for quite a while now. And you've obviously, firstly, congratulations on like getting your PhD. I mean, you officially a doctor. And B, obviously, congratulations. I know you've written an award-winning book recently. And obviously, you're quite passionate about the difference between the gap between neuroscience and obviously early years. And that's what your real drive is. And I love how passionate you are about it. So, I mean, could you just introduce yourself and like kind of your journey and where that passion comes from, please?
Yeah, sure. So I started my earliest career as a nursery nurse, as we called them back then. I qualified in the year 2002 and I was on a foundation degree. But luckily, you know, I was working in a nursery at the time and my lecturer at the time obviously saw something in me and then said, look, you know, I can see your flair for theory and you know, how you're passing that on to your peers and you should think about, you know, what about, you know, lecturing. I was like, oh my God, wow. And she kind of took me under her wing and I started learning on the job, as it were. So I was at the nursery, but definitely my passion when I saw that there were these students bored, not really getting it on the foundation degree, and I'm there as a fellow student but able to impart the theory that, you know, we need to understand in a way that they can grapple with and make sense of straight away. I was like, this is where I want to be. But I was yes, I was a student then, and I remember reading a book and there was only one page on neuroscience and it was literally just two synapses at the point of connecting, sorry, two neurons at the point of connection. And I was like, oh my God, I want more. But wherever I went, there wasn't anything, TJ. And I thought, no, this ain't right. Because this, you know, we are our brains, we are our bodies. We need to understand that interconnectedness. So I started doing research around it in my BA, my MA, and then I made a doctoral thesis out of it. I then, you know, went into different roles. I was an apprenticeship manager. I, you know, realised our students were really defensive, really lacking in self-confidence. And I thought, I wouldn't trust you with a tortoise, let alone a child. You know what I mean? So I wanted to work on their mental health and their self-perceptions. And I built around the apprenticeship emotional intelligence programs, you know, got the mentor support coaches, really hands-on, just looking at the person as a whole and not just, well, yeah, well, you have to get through these hoops and then, you know, either you're good enough or you're not. And that's not how I see education, to be honest. And I think when we were first talking about this interview the other day, we were talking about the linearity of the education system and how, well, you know, you've all got to do this by a certain age and da, da, da. And I thought, no. And the more I progressed in my career, I realised we need to start smashing that false ideology. So, you know, like you mentioned, I then went into writing books. I'm on the third one. I'm very passionate about practitioners understanding the role of self-regulation and our role as co-regulators, but also the responsibility then on us to look after our own mental health and, you know, how our leaders need to look after that. And I'm just trying to, I suppose, change mindsets and hearts, if you like, in a nutshell.
Yeah, fair. I mean, so we're like, what do you think where does this passion come from? What are you trying to do? I mean, like, because obviously just like, so I obviously when I first started speaking to you, I mean, like I'm not very good at science. So in layman terms, like the theory that you're trying to prove and trying to go with, like neuroscience and early years. I mean, why isn't it not in education at the moment? Like, what are you trying to specifically try to do?
Yeah, well, your questions are exactly the basis of our doctoral thesis. So you would think, well, look, you know, you're looking after babies, you're educating our youngest, you would understand, then we need to know about the brain, the mind and the body, okay, and how these are all influenced by everything and everyone around us. And for years and years and years, this language simply hasn't entered the lexicon. And it is because, and I've understood that because I've had discussions with neuroscientists, early as academics, and there is a massive divide in terms of knowledge, voice, and power. And I'm saying this has to be smashed. I'm saying when you are told no, when you are told it's not for you, this knowledge, which I have been told time and time again, TJ, I don't take your word. I then think about, why is this person telling me no? If I'm looking after this baby and this baby is dysregulated, but you're telling me not to pick up a baby and give it the support he or she needs, there's something going wrong. And when I was in a nursery, I was told, don't pick up the babies, you're going to spoil them. And I was just a student and I could have easily said, yeah, no, you're right, I'm terribly sorry. But I was like, no, this is absolutely insane. It's like the same concept of letting babies cry it out, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. And, you know, neuroscience, people shouldn't be afraid of it. Like, oh my God, it's, you know, we can't, you know, understand it. It's not for us. It's the, you know, the study of the brain and the nervous system, right? We are all affected by each other. If you're sat there now making me stressed, I'm going to start getting the jitters. My heart's going to start going, you know, I'm not going to be able to focus. But we put our children through this in our ridiculous education system. And I'm saying, teachers, come on, there's an alternative. You know, we should be taught about the neuroscience of early brain development and behaviour and teaching and learning strategies, because we're doing that. You know, like if we take, for example, the limbic system, what we call the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain, they are inextricably linked, right? They have to be in constant communication, so that our emotional brain is being told by our clever brain upstairs, shh, you're all right, calm down, you can focus on your work, everything's fine. But if our children are triggered on a daily basis, which they are, they're going to find it really difficult, because that panic button's being triggered, right? Oh my God, I'm feeling stressed. I've just been humiliated. I've just been embarrassed. You know, the pressure of testing alone is causing our children severe mental health problems. We've got anxiety manifesting in toddlers. We've got self-harming in 3-year-olds. And this has to stop. And I'm just saying, if we understand the impact of what we do at neurobiological and behavioural level, then maybe we would think twice about what we put our children through. And for me, TJ, there are 2 things that really need to stop: testing and behaviour management policies. They are destroying our children at a younger and younger age. Like ITT, initial teacher training, it's very standard, it's linear. And I just think we need to, you know, disenthrall ourselves of these mentalities and these ideologies and say, you know what, it's post-COVID. We're not even post-COVID yet. We have a chance to start anew. It's not about education reform is needed. It isn't. It's about we need to revolutionise education. And that is the responsibility of every single teacher. I had it as an FE and HE lecturer. You know, there were things that were not working for my students, and I wouldn't dare fail them or, you know, reprimand them because of situations they found themselves in that they didn't want to be in, right? So I had to break those rules and make up my own to serve my students. And I'm just saying to teachers, look around you and look what you're forced to do. Yeah, but, you know, our school's always done this. Behaviour management works, it's quick. Yeah, because it's lazy and it gets instant results, but you're not instilling an intrinsic motivation in those children. You're humiliating them. So of course, if I say to you, right, TJ, you know, go on timeout, think about what you've done. I'm really sorry, embarrassed, 29 of my peers are looking at me. No, what about TJ? Tell me about what happened. What, you know, what's going on? How are you feeling? Like, where's all that relational aspect in how we care for and educate our children? And I'm just saying, traditional teaching values are not working anymore. We need something that's more organic, something where we can be led by the children, not where, well, I've got this prescriptive thing that I need to follow, and follow it I shall to the, you know, the last dot, because we are excluding so many of our most vulnerable children, and we don't have to do it that way.
Sure. I mean, you raised quite a few good points, but I think you're right in some. I mean, you are right. The way that the system is going, the disadvantaged children do effectively get. I mean, the gap between the advantage and disadvantage is bridging, isn't it? I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, I think in some respects, I mean, even doing this podcast, I feel like a revolution is in the air, isn't it? In some respects, in education,
Yeah, because people are wanting to talk about it more. You know, I don't know how familiar you are with the early years, but we've got baseline assessment, right, that's now kicking in with our 4-year-olds. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically in their first 6 weeks of starting a nursery school, they're going to be tested on maths and literacy in a room, one-on-one with a teacher with an iPad. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about you, but any 4-year-old coming out of, say, the home environment for the first time into that setting is going to be so anxious. I've seen it year after year myself working in nurseries and schools. The last thing they want to be doing is sat down in an arbitrary test, which means nothing to them, and they're being assessed on their ability at that age. It's insane behaviour. And what I'm saying is, I mentioned the word linear earlier on, and they're looking at the nursery, you know, primary education as preparation because every child needs to get to college or university. No, that's not the case. We don't all thrive like that, do we? I certainly didn't. I was so dense at school, TJ. I didn't know what was going on around me. I didn't much care. I do know that I wanted to please my teachers. I loved being at school because home was dangerous. Do you know what I mean? Like coming from a background of aces, you know instinctively, I'm all right here. I'm safe here. I feel good here. But I couldn't engage my brain to learn. I honestly, if you gave me 2 instructions, I wouldn't hear it. I wouldn't know what was going on. And we have so many children in our settings that are traumatized. They are from chaotic backgrounds. You mentioned disadvantage. This isn't acknowledged half enough in education policy. We're meant to be having mental health leads in primary and secondary schools, according to 2 green papers in 2018. They haven't kicked in yet, you know? And I'm just, you're right, there's something in the air. We're on the cusp of something either really awful and disastrous for our children, or we have the power to do something different. And I'm saying, if we dare, each and every one of us, to do one thing different in our classrooms, in our nursery environments, we would make such a lasting difference to our children. Just think about it, going with different eyes, if you like, you know, looking at it for, well, you know, how is this experience for this child? This child has sensory integration issues. This child has ADHD. This one has autism. Yes, they've all got their plans, but what are you doing in that environment? Because I'll tell you something, we are triggering our children all the time and we're reprimanding them for being triggered. And I'm saying we need a new way, and it's up to each teacher to make that new way visible for every child. And it is possible. I don't want to hear people telling me, no, but you know what, I'll get told off and it's not worth it because I'll lose my job. Well, but that's why they do it. If everyone had that mentality, you know, we would have, you know, which we have got, the status quo lasting for decades and decades and decades. And I'm saying now is the time. We're becoming more educated as a workforce in early years especially. I'm on the working group for writing up the new curricular framework, Birth to 5 Matters, where we are including terms like self-reg and co-regulation. And I've always been told, TJ, no, it's too complex, it's scientific, it's not for early years. But that's a good way to keep the knowledge from where it needs to be, isn't it? Because then you can tell me what to do and I have to listen to you because I'm not smart enough. But you know best because you know more than me. And I'm saying that's not the case, yeah? These academics, you know, whoever, you know, Ofsted, all these arbiters do not know more than you. You know your children and you know that you're stuck in ways that are thwarting their progress, not just academically, but personally and spiritually. And I'm saying enough is enough. We know what they need. Come on and do it.
Yeah, for sure. You know what, can I just say, I love your passion, regardless of if people agree with you or not, right? There must be something there for you to believe in what you're saying so much. And it's very, very clear you do, you know, and in some respects, I do agree with you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this will probably agree with you as well. I think you raised a couple of really important points and very controversial points in some respects, because you said about no exams and you said about the no behaviour policies. Now, some schools will definitely argue about both points, but let's talk about behaviour first. So behaviour, in some schools, the behaviour is so bad that they have to have really strong behaviour management policies in place. I mean, some schools will argue and say, well, how can we take them out? Our kids will just run riots, you know? I mean, but how do we...
What's bad behaviour? What would you mean by bad behaviour?
So like pushing each other around or like making loads of noise, not letting the teacher teach. I'm just giving you examples that come out in my head. But I mean, it's like disruptive behaviour.
But then there's a source for that. Either the children are bored, the teacher doesn't respect those children, and the children definitely know there's no respect. Because I've seen it as an FE lecturer. You know, I was given the worst groups that simply no one taught, TJ. And when I first went in, they weren't coming in, man. We'd have 10 a.m. starts, but they wouldn't be rocking up till 11, half 11 with the attitude, I don't care. Basically, I know you don't care about me, so I'm not going to care about you. And I'm like, but you're all here for a reason. So I sat them down. What are you here for? Tell me, you know, and I'd go round. I'd tell them about my experiences at school. I'd tell them about my adversity. I swear to you straight away, as soon as you are honest if you're talking about teenagers, for example, because I think you are, or the slightly younger ones, you are honest with them. You identify with their feelings. They matter, they value, and you connect. They will not be, as you say, behaving badly. Yeah, there are so many different reasons, and I'm saying it's up to us as teachers to understand that. I never in my career as an FEHE lecturer had to use a behaviour management. I simply never did. I just didn't. We had an air of respect. No one ever kicked off. I mean, I've had some severely autistic students, and I just would let them do what they wanted. And all that meant, TJ, is that they wouldn't wear their trainers in the college because they love to feel their feet on the carpet with their socks. They'd have to write against the wall. They couldn't be on a table, for example. They'd wanted to be alone that day. Whatever they did, I let them do it, but I'd always check in. Yeah, they passed with A stars. They passed with A stars, and that is fantastic to them because they're saying, well, you know what, you've made me, you've adopted the conditions that are okay for me. You've supported me. I'm going to show up. And I mean that academically as well as emotionally. So, and then when you're talking about the younger ones, because we've done teenagers now, and let's talk about the younger ones, because time out and going to the head teacher and being on a thundercloud is standard practice, isn't it? Rewards and punishments. And it's crap and it's detrimental, and it isn't teaching our children how to be pro-social. Right? There is no intrinsic understanding. It's just, oh, I don't want to be shamed up in front of my friends, so I'm going to do this. Okay. Oh, I'm going to be bribed. Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to get a star today. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get a treat at the end of the week. And I see just atrocious methods of controlling children. It's not difficult to look at an alternative. We've got emotion coaching by Dr. Janet Rose. She gave one of the keynotes at my conference last week. 3 simple steps. Validate the child's emotions. Listen to them. Give them that space. TJ, I think a lot of people are under the misapprehension that, by being more relational and eschewing behaviour management means that, there's no consequences. There has to be consequences for bad behaviour. There are. But they're done in a way that is respectful of the child, right? It takes into consideration what that child is feeling and going through at that point. So, okay, you kicked your friend or you bit your friend. Tell me what you were feeling at that point. What led you to that? Okay, right. All emotions are absolutely okay and healthy, right? We can't be shaming up our children for feeling jealous, angry, hurt, or all of those emotions. But we say not all behaviours are okay. When you're feeling angry, what else can we do? Well, I've got a stress ball. I can go to my Zen zone. I can go for a walk with Mine. There are alternatives. Now, going back to you saying there are children that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, it's not just financially, it's emotionally, it's linguistically. These are our children that come into our settings already at a disadvantage because they haven't been spoken to by their parents, let's say. They haven't been given that companionship and that respect, right? Do as I say. Why? Do as I say, because I said so. Minimal conversation, minimal back and forth dialogue, yeah? So there's no emotional vocabulary being built, so they're not becoming emotionally literate. So then we have them lashing out at others, themselves, throwing themselves on the floor, harming others, doing whatever with the furniture. And that's because they don't have that. But how about this? How are you feeling? Well, I've got butterflies, I've got a headache, I feel sick, my heart's beating really quickly, anxiety, frustration. So they can say it instead of acting it out. And we're not doing that at a most basic level. What we do is look at what they do, reprimand them and get a letter home. 3 strikes and you're excluded. No, zero tolerance. Policies. And I'm saying it has to stop because I swear to you, this is a pipeline to prison. We carry on like this, the further it goes on, they're going to be shunted out of the education system because they never fit in. But actually, it's the system that doesn't fit them. And again, that is why it needs to change urgently.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I completely get what you're saying. I think when obviously is it the teacher's job though? Is it the teacher's job to be a teacher as well as a counsellor? Because ultimately that's what, in some respects, you're asking them to do, aren't you? You're
Yes,
asking them.
it is.
Yeah, I mean, like some would argue that you're effective. I mean, that's not your job, is it? Like your job is to try and teach them as much as you can. Yeah, you want to set them up for life, but ultimately your job is just to teach them. You know,
The thing is, sorry, did you finish or did I butt in?
no, I mean that's fine. Yeah, go for it.
No, man, I don't want to cut you off, so that was really rude.
No, it's all right. I mean, but ultimately, like if they've got 30 kids in a classroom and 29 are acting well, and you've got the one child that is disrupting like the rest of the class and disrupting the rest of their learning, I mean, a teacher can't necessarily sit there for 20 minutes trying to like counsel them, you know, like they've still got to teach the other kids. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it won't take 20 minutes. How better to spend your time in saying, you know, are you okay? What's going on? How are you feeling? How are you feeling? They might not have eaten last night. They might be tired. They might have watched them, you know, their dad abuse their mum. They might have not, you know, even been at home because of what's going on at home. A simple question, check in. Are you all right? Listen, I didn't, you know, I don't think what you did there was the correct way to deal with blah, 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 whatever it was. Let's have a chat later. All right, just stick with me for now. I've been there. I've done it for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? And not once, TJ, have I resorted to behaviour management. And it's not about, well, you know, a teacher's role isn't to counsel. I believe, I mean, not in the way you put it, but yes, it is our role. We are there in loco parentis. We are there to be their guardians. I'm not just going to look at a brain sat there. I'm going to look at a whole person and think that person don't look right. They ain't smiled. They haven't spoken today. I don't want to teach someone like that. I want to connect. I don't do superficial. I can have a room of 50, but I guarantee you everyone will get a bit of me, because teaching has to be a social interpersonal experience. Otherwise we are failing that student, be it a child or a teenager. So it's not like we're paid to teach and nothing else. I don't think any teacher just does teaching for a job. They do it because they are passionate about doing some good that lasts in that child, you know, across a lifetime. So yeah, it's like if you were to come on this podcast with me this evening and I look really, you know, crestfallen, and you're thinking, come on, I've got a podcast to get out. But you're not just going to carry on regardless. So you're going to go, Min, are you all right? You know, that one bit. So it's not a 20-minute chat sometimes. It's like, no, you know what? I'm not feeling all right. Let's have a chat later. All right, wicked. However it manifests, because obviously age stage of understanding, that's going to be different. But you get what I'm saying. Connect. It makes all the difference. We are wired for connection. Our brains are social organs. Yeah, we don't thrive in isolation. That's why prisoners are put in isolation, because it drives them insane and they die not soon, you know, quite soon after. So I think we are counsellors, we are parents. We're not friends, but we're there. And we are respectful of our teenagers, especially. And I keep going on about teenagers, but they don't get respect. They don't get listened to, or do our children. We do to them, we don't do with them. How about going in of a morning and saying, right, what do you want to learn today? We've got a rough outline. Where do you want to take it? That's my approach. Well, we have to learn 1.1 and 1.3. Get your textbooks out. But it's old. It doesn't work. We need to go with where they are and look at how they want to take their learning and guide them in it, not dictate so much. Yes, we're teachers, but you know, it can be more fluid than that and more child-led. And I think that's greatly lacking. And I think that's why so many parents are choosing now to homeschool, actually, because it's failing their children.
Yeah. Well, what needs to be done then? Like, I mean, what strategies need to be implemented from early years to make sure that we're not failing these children?
I think we need to get more clued up about the neuroscience of early brain development. It has to be embedded in ITT and early years professional development programs as standard. We need to be trauma informed. We need to be ACE aware, adverse childhood experience aware. We need to, again, eschew behaviour management. We also need to be less linear and more messy, if you like, and free flow with our education. It needs to stem from children and their preoccupations, not well, we've got this syllabus to get through by this, you know, age. You need to have achieved this because you need to be having this for college and then that for uni. And I'm saying that's old. You need to get rid of that mentality and see what every child is truly capable of. We're all great at different things, yeah, but the education system as it is doesn't allow for that diversity of capability. It is a seriously one size fits all off, and it's not the way. So I think if we start adopting those approaches, like I just identified, in a meaningful way, and we do dare to start breaking the mold, then great things can happen. And I do believe that.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable that you were saying that, because I don't know if you saw my podcast with Gavin McCormack, but Gavin, he's a principal of Montessori school in Australia, and he talks about how he's given freedom to use the curriculum, but to do it in his way that's best for his kids. And for him, it's all about finding their niche. Like for him, it's not about like ticking the box for the curriculum. It's about finding their niche and really pushing them to be the best at what they're going to be.
Yes, I haven't. Will you send me a link, because someone mentioned it and I couldn't find it? I'm really interested to watch it, actually. And that is what we want. We need that as a blueprint globally. And you watch how every child will thrive. No child can fail to thrive when their interests and their abilities are taken into consideration and made as part of that planning. We don't do that. We don't care what TJ's good at. We don't care what TJ likes. TJ has to jump through these academic hoops. And if he doesn't, sorry, TJ, fail. Yeah. And it's so wrong. You know, we're teachers because we believe in these children to a level, you know. So why are we not embodying that in our practices? And I'm saying enough with the old, create the new. Don't be afraid to do it. What's the worst that can happen? You know, like when we were looking at protesting for the baseline assessment, I remember a few teachers saying, "Oh, you know, I don't want to get Delilah Hustle. You know, I don't want to lose my job." And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes it takes that, though. Sometimes it takes that bravery. I was put a post on social media the other day, like asking about professionals and in their childhood, what were they like? And I said, because I was so passive, I daren't say, you know, not boo to a goose, but I would never defy a teacher, never defy a parent. And I don't know what, you know, the pivotal point was for me. But now I'm like, oh my God, if I don't like it, I'm going to challenge it. And I'm just asking that of other professionals. If you are in a practice that you know is not only disservicing that child, but is also detrimental to their well-being, you need to stop it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not willing to, yeah, go on.
No, go on.
No, man, I talk too much.
It's quite interesting that, because when I was back in year 11, I had this teacher called Mr. Slotnick, and he taught me business and economics. I remember this, right? And we're talking about hyperinflation. Anyway, besides the point, I remember saying, like, why doesn't the government just print off more money or something? And he was like, well, no, that will cause superinflation and all of this, right? And then we came into school 3 weeks later, and in the news, the Bank of England had printed off more money. But you know what's funny about that is because I shouldn't know better than him. But I mean, sometimes I feel like in this country, we feel like teachers should know everything. But that's anything, like your directors, your managers, your mum and dad, everyone should know everything. And sometimes I feel like, should we not maybe learn from the kids sometimes, you know? Like,
yes.
I mean, I think some of the best conversations I've had with teachers who love doing what they do, they like, one of my favorite things about teaching is that the kids push me, and I have to think about things I don't know. And that's one of the...
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about being a teacher, isn't it, in some respects?
But that takes a level of humility that some teachers do not have because of that power dynamic, like you say. And it's that power dynamic that drives the likes of behaviour management. You do as I say because I am your boss. No, we're all human beings. You know, you can't be talking about a 36-month-old child in ways of like testing them and expecting the world of them when we don't even understand how their brains work fully, how that, you know, how we affect their well-being biologically, physiologically, behaviorally. And I just think exactly like you said, be humble, learn from the children. This is what it's all about, to be child-led. Oh, what are you interested in today? How about, why don't you come over here? Let's see what's going on, and problem solve with them. Go be curious with them, because they're seeing the world with fresh eyes. Let's just say our early years, and everything's wow. And you've got this dry bone curriculum that you're having to enforce all about literacy and numeracy. Boring. It can be fantastic, don't get me wrong. But all I'm saying is, let's make room for our children's preoccupations. You know what? When we are really engaged in something, you know what it's like. You could be there doing your work for 3 hours and you think, blimey, 3 hours is gone. It's not like 5 minutes. Yeah. But what I think our education systems are like throughout, from early years to FEHE, is those 5 minutes feel like the 3 hours. And we have got that wrong, and there is something wrong we are doing grossly day in, day out. And I'm just saying to teachers, reflect honestly about where you're at and why you are doing what you are doing and what room there is to improve. And I'm sure when we are giving more focus to our relationships with our children and our teenagers, and we are more honest about how I think there is a lot of power dynamic going on there, especially when you said earlier in the conversation, but those that are badly behaved, we need to drop that defense and look into it. Why? What can I do? Am I connecting enough? Am I making everything engaging enough? Or what needs to change? Have the chat with your students or your children. What should we do today? Where are you at? What's taking your interest? Well, that talk about cross-curricular, our children are so inventive and creative, and their imaginations are just absolutely phenomenal. Why aren't we using that as the basis? Because then we are going to reach every child, and every child will achieve, not according to some, arbitrary nonsense tick box exercise, which they're starting to do from the early years now, and it follows them through right to HE and FE, and I'm saying it has to stop. It's not working anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And again, sorry to go back to Gavin McCormack, but it's really interesting what you're saying. And I think like this education system, it's often, this is the curriculum, you've got to teach it and get the kids to understand. And I saw a post that Gavin put up the other day, and he's like, well, I had to teach my children about volcanoes. So I took them through the journey that I went through when I went and visited volcanoes. And halfway through, they were really inspired to learn more. And it's not necessarily like him teaching the subject, but like they're learning because he's inspiring them to learn.
That's right.
So, I mean, like, do we need more freedom to do that in this country? Or are we not being taught, like, in the teacher training to teach in that way? I mean, it's quite regimented, isn't it?
I mean, I can only go on my experiences. I've done a bit on ITT, and obviously I've been through the process myself, and it is very traditional. It is really embedded in the founding fathers of, if you like, of psychology and child development. It's very much, you must learn this, this and this, behaviour management strategies, why we need to. And I found it really stifling. There wasn't anything in, like say Foucault or Bordeaux, education and voice and power. That didn't really feature. And I came away from it feeling really dissatisfied, to be honest with you. And I think that, ironically, you speak about inspiration, that inspired me to think, bloody hell, I'm not doing that to my students. And I did different. And I think my background, again, personally, was a factor in that, because I knew that I wasn't, they couldn't reach me as a student, but I had my own reasons why. And I'm saying, then if I know that now as a lecturer, then I want lecturers to know that about their students. And that's why I said to you earlier on, the need to be trauma informed, to have, an understanding of ACEs and our brains and our bodies, and also, but everything else around it, like you mentioned as well, having that passion. You can't put it in a job description, you must inspire. It don't work like that, does it? But if you are passionate and you are creative and you do go off piste, and you do allow the children or those older students to have a voice, my goodness, are they going to be inspired? Because you end up being a role model for that person who really believed and was made to believe that they wouldn't go anywhere. And I was that child, and I was that teenager. So to have teens that I taught 12 odd years ago who are now midwives, teachers, children's champions in foster care say to me, it's because of you I'm doing this. TJ, there is no money in the world that I would want. That to me is gold dust. Minette, you touched me figuratively. You know, you made a difference in my life. And that's all I want. And if every teacher can aspire to that in their behaviour towards these children, then job done, man, globally. And I know it sounds really trite to say it, but it does start with each and every one of us.
We are very far from achieving that, like generally across the UK. I mean, we're so set in a certain way at the moment, you know, like, I mean, to do this all overnight in some respects, I'm not saying that that's what you're asking to do, but to try and do this overnight, it's just probably going to collapse, because we're going to have so many teething problems, and it's just not going to work. I mean, what, like, is there a strategy that you think that we can implement to try and get this up and running?
Like I said, get trauma informed. You can do it overnight. It's every relationship, every child therein is a relationship. It don't have to crumble overnight. I'm not saying, hey, go in and turn your tables upside down, anarchy. You know, I'm just saying go in and be humble, be open to relationship sections with every child. TJ, it can't go wrong. Okay. When we are looking, when I say trauma informed, I'm saying use more empowerment approaches, instill more hope, make sure that everyone is included in terms of understanding their well-being and providing for this. Your staff, your children, your families, their parents, their carers, be it foster carers. When there is an overall climate of trust, respect, belonging, everything else, I guarantee you, falls into place. I've done it, I've seen it, I've experienced it. Doesn't have to fall to pieces. What's falling to pieces is the status quo. It really is. I think society is breaking down, and I think our schools play a massive part in that, because they're stuck in this ancient paradigm that is failing. And it's evident to see, because look at our prison stats. Look at our unemployed. Look at we're the most depressed. I think we have been, haven't we? The most depressed country in the world for many years. As a lecturer, I used to save the cutouts from, you know, the broadsheets 2005, 6, 2007, 2008. You know, England ranked second highest of most depressed in the world. The children most unhappy. Like, come on, man. If this isn't us being accountable, then I don't know who is. Yeah, doesn't have to be something seismic overnight. Go to bed tonight and think about it. What am I doing that's great? What am I doing that needs to be improved? What do I have the power to change tomorrow morning? You know what? It might be greeting my students at a door. It might be not being so fast to reprimand, but saying, are you okay? How are you feeling? Do you want to chat after? Because, like, I'm going to go back to that point. You said, yeah, but teachers aren't counsellors. I'm saying we have a moral responsibility to safeguard the well-being of every child, and that should never stop.
Of course. To be honest with you, look, just to kind of clarify, I was only playing devil's advocate earlier, right? I mean, I don't
lie, you admit, no, it's true.
But no, I completely agree. And in some respects, the teachers that I speak to that are passionate, I want to make a difference to these kids. It just comes natural to them in some respects. Like they go above and beyond. And again, I think, Mine, I think obviously you're trying to make, I know you're obviously making some points, but I don't think by any means you're saying that teachers haven't been doing a good job, because teachers have been doing an amazing job this year, you know?
They're fantastic. Yeah. My goodness, the ones I talk to are awe-inspiring. Yeah. But what I'm saying is they are the few. Yeah. They are the few, because the norm and the standard defies them to be any different. I suppose it takes what you would call a maverick, a non-conformist, to go, you know what, man, this ain't working. I'm just going to try this. But that step of awareness to jumping to doing something about it can take a whole career. Sometimes doesn't happen because of that fear that's been instilled. My goodness, teachers are working harder than ever now, with little, you know, acknowledgement, with little respect. More, you give me everything, I need more. And they do pull it out of the bag, and they are there day in, day out, and they go above and beyond the brief. And I'm saying we wouldn't have to go above and beyond the brief if the brief was sufficient. And I think that's why we need to get some sort of movement going, so that this does become the norm. Yeah.
Perfect. And like, just I'm going to touch base on a point that I wanted to bring up a little bit earlier. I mean, we're speaking about so much in depth, but obviously you touched base on exams earlier, right? And you said it's something that's got to be scrapped. Like, why do you think it's got to be scrapped? Because a lot of people are for exams, and ultimately they're a way to assess how a child is getting on. Like, if you're applying for jobs, how are you going to like take somebody on if you don't have exams and have grade systems? You know, like what is your sort of answer to that? Like, I mean, what do we do to replace exams, and how else are we going to assess children's ability?
We can assess ongoingly, formatively. We assess day in, day out. We're making judgments every day on our children. So why then, when it matters the most, are we condensing it into 1 to 3 hours? Oh, and if you're not good enough, bye, you don't get into that college or that university, and it's there with you forevermore. There are, again, alternatives, coursework, classroom based. We had this debate again on LinkedIn the other day, and you know, all our points are valid. No one has to agree with me. I'm just saying, based on my experiences as a student formerly and as a lecturer, and speaking to colleagues, you know, across the sector, they are further distressing our children. Some who have not had their dyslexia diagnoses, for example, or ADHD diagnosed, they are getting physically ill. I've had so many parents come up to me recently because of one of the chapters I'm writing, and they're giving me case studies saying that their teenagers have been suicidal over exams, the exam prep, literally pulling their hair out. They're developing eczema, panic attacks. You know, all sorts of terrible issues are happening to some of our children, not all, by the pressure that exams put on them. Mm-hmm. And when we go back to the neurobiology, and I said to you, you know, if we understand how the brain functions, yes, stress can be a force for good. If it's short term, it's quick, it gets you going. You know, TJ, there's a lion, watch! And then you jump into action. Okay, but there aren't any lions, and we're not in a jungle. We're in an exam room. And what it is, when we are under pressure, especially as children, because that brain region that we demand the most of, the prefrontal cortex, that takes a whole 26 years to develop, right? And when we're looking at executive functioning skills, they all reside mainly in that prefrontal cortex. We put all that pressure on that child in one sitting. Stressed brains cannot learn. It's just a scientific fact, okay? Yeah, different scenarios, different individuals, brain activity differs based on experience. I mean, how far back you want to take it, but fundamentally, we are not primed to just perform in one sitting and then that's our judgment based on that. Some people can thrive on it. They can cram, they can study. They might have parents who are supportive. They have resources, they have money. They know how to revise. You know, they've got the self-regulation to revise, to practice day in, day out. But many of our students don't, TJ. Yeah. You know, they do come from chaotic backgrounds. They might, you know, like me, I had to like lock myself in a toilet to revise. It was the only place I'd get some calm and peace, and I knew I wasn't going to be, you know, affected by what was going on. So you don't know what every student's going through. And I'm just saying, if it was more bespoke and again, formatively done and not in one sitting done, I just think we would be supporting so many more students to thrive where they are not thriving under the current system. I don't believe in exams at all.
Yeah,
I think they're outmoded and they need to be replaced.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think there's probably a lot of people that kind of maybe agree with that. And I think a lot of people would disagree, but everyone's, like you said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And but kind of just like in some respects, backing up what you're saying, because I've got a nephew that he doesn't think that he's good at school, and he finds himself in the lower sets, and when he goes to school, he's afraid to ask questions because he looks silly, and then when he gets to exams, he might have revised whatever, but he really struggles because he just naturally panics in exams, and he doesn't always get the best grades. And now you're basically, because it breaks my heart, because I wanted to succeed as much as possible, but the whole idea in this country is that you're only going to succeed if you get good grades, you know, and that's what he thinks. He thinks, oh, I'm going to get rubbish grades, so I'm not going to succeed in life. And it's failing him, you know, the system is failing him. But then on the flip side, my other nephew, he smashes the grades. He loves learning, and you know, like it's just, for what every kid is so different. But you're right, like for these kids that the system is failing, something needs to be done, definitely, because they should still have a right to succeed, even if they don't necessarily do well in education, you know.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's the thing. It's the key way to decide who is good enough and who isn't. And it is these children who do fall out of the education system. Well, I weren't good enough. But actually, no, the system isn't good enough for these children. And I do think we can make massive positive change if we just dare to think differently and therefore do differently. It doesn't have to be based on an exam. There could be so many different alternatives to that we can adopt to go, oh, yeah, they're thriving in that area. You know, we are multifaceted beings at the end of the day. We are not a grade. I don't remember my grades. I know the experience of doing them, and I know that it was deeply anxiety filling for me. And I'm someone who suffers from anxiety anyway. So for me, exams, man, I got an F at maths. You know, it was terrible. Even being sat there, the sweats, I started shaking. You know, we don't know. All right, I'm not saying every child is like that, but you know, it's daunting, isn't it? And I think we're doing it to our children at far too young an age, at 4. And I think it needs to stop, because that sign, that baseline assessment, has basically given the green flag for exams to be the way forward. And you're right, there are going to be proponents that absolutely is the way forward. It's fair, it's unbiased, you know, all the reasons. I do take them on board, but I'm saying no. I'm saying there has to be a viable alternative, because too many of our children don't cope in that environment, TJ. You know, and I just think, why don't we just try it? Why don't we just try to do something different? You never know, it might work. It can't be any worse than what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah,
is my point.
And you say that though. I mean, you say that it can't get any worse, but across the globe, like if people think that you've studied in the UK or you've got an education in the UK, it seemed to be a prestigious like honour in some respects across the world. You know, I mean, like in a lot of countries like India or whatever, they think of the education system in the UK being phenomenal.
Yeah, but you know, but that's a very historical thing, isn't it? And it's a cultural concept as well. I think, you know, England ruled the world. You know, they monopolised so many countries, and it was England in this country, England in that country. And I just think that that's a legacy of all of that. And I don't think it fits anymore. I really don't. Also, I was just going to ask you, what's the benchmark? And when you said India, yeah, of course. You know, when there are pockets of deprivation that are so vast, wherever, you know, Africa, Turkey, India, and you do see somewhere like the USA or China or the UK, you think, oh my goodness, they've got it sussed, if only. But then we are living it and we're saying, my goodness, if only, when we're looking at New Zealand or Finland or Denmark. You know, there are so many more fantastic models that we can and should be looking to as a blueprint for how we educate our children. And I don't think exams fit that. I do think they're outmoded and they are not working for our children. Also, it shines a light on the inadequacy of how we assess ability, because ability isn't single faceted, it's multifaceted, multidimensional, and exams simply don't reflect that diversity.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, we've covered so much, haven't we? I mean, you're obviously very passionate, and you're on this journey to try revolutionise education in some respects. I mean, like, what's the journey for you? Like, what's next for you? Like, what are your plans going forward?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I'd love to get into policy. I'd love to influence education policy. I love writing. I just want to keep reaching out to people and yeah, I just want to keep that message going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I do want it to be via my writing, talks like this, but ultimately influencing policy. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And to finish off, like for any teachers that are listening or any newly qualified teachers that are listening, what advice would you have for them?
Nourish your children's spirits, I think, would be the way forward. And that does for me encapsulate being more creative, being more inventive, going with the children's flow. I just want people to be more understanding of trauma and early adversity. I think for me that's the big one, actually, TJ, to be more trauma informed and more ACE aware, so that we really don't judge our children unfairly, and we do look beyond what we are seeing and thinking about, well, you know, I do take their background into consideration. I do know that they've gone through this. I do know that it shapes their behaviour in this way. I do know their triggers lie here. And just to be more mindful and respectful of our children, and to dare to do different.
Absolutely.
And to challenge whatever they feel isn't working for their children, and to do differently. It just takes one action, one teacher, one action across the world for me, like, wow. Just to get that, you know, the catalyst in there and go, oh, I didn't think of that. I'm going to try this tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
No, it was, like I said, Dr. Pepper advert. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that's absolutely fair enough. I think you've given us such great advice, and there's so much that they can take away from this. I mean, if anybody is interested in like kind of looking at what you do and like the kind of neuroscience behind it, where should they start? Where's the starting point for them to kind of take things on board?
Website, what is it, mineconkbayir.co.uk, I believe, and I've got an award-winning app that's free. It's on Google, called Keep Your Cool Toolbox, which is all about supporting children to better understand their own emotions and how they can overcome dysregulation in the moment. There's lots of strategies in there, provided by teachers, provided by SENCOs, provided by children and their parents. So I've got 2 courses award-winning on the website. I've got an online self-regulation forum coming up next month. So yeah, just check out my website. There's loads on there, loads of talks, loads of interviews and all that. Yeah.
Amazing. That's
and
fantastic.
LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook as well. Make
sure you follow you, basically, yeah?
Yeah, man, follow me. Follow anyone like me who cares about children, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And me.
Yes, and TJ, your interviews are so superb, man. I just want to say they're engaging, they're sincere, they're warm, and they are doing so well. And it's so wicked to see a new face on social media and doing what's needed. I think it's an important part of this movement. I really do. And thank you for having me on.
No, absolutely. I think it's this podcast was only to create a platform for teachers to share the amazing things they're doing, and on top of that, share their views about where education needs to go. Because I think it's like, obviously the media and politicians don't portray or give justice to what teachers and school staff are doing at the moment. And it's amazing to have people like you on, because when I first started, I didn't really know what to expect, but I've learned so much, and especially like having people like you on. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I probably wouldn't even know like who you were in the nicest way possible, but now I think like so much of you, you know, and you're so passionate.
I bet you wish you never met me now. It's like, oh my God, that woman don't stop talking.
No, I'm more thinking after COVID, we might need to go for a meal or something and then actually meet up in person. But yeah.
Chat all night. You'd be like, all right, man, enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fair enough. But no, it was amazing having you on. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for like giving me your time.
Likewise, man. And send me the link to the Gavin McCormack interview.
Yeah, I will do, 100%.
All right, wicked. Have a good night, man.
Thanks, Mina.